Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. We are in the fourth week in our study on the miraculousness of Quran from the 25th word. We talked about many other aspects. This week, inshallah, we will talk about the wonderful uniqueness of its style, the style of the Quran, and how it expresses the meanings. And today we will study two verses from the Quran. We have Colin Hocam from England and Mustafa Tuna Hocam from United States. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Now we shall point out the Quranic styles with regard to surah, aim, verse, phrase, and word. For example, if the surah about what they are disputing, Surah Amma, is studied carefully, it shows the events of the hereafter, the resurrection of the dead, and paradise and hell in a style so unique and wonderful that it proves the divine acts and dominical works, Asar Rabbaniya, in this world, as though looking at each of those events of the next world and convinces the heart. To expound the style of this surah fully would be lengthy, so we shall merely indicate one or two points as follows. At the start of the surah, to prove the resurrection, it says, "We have made the earth a beautifully decked out cradle for you, and the mountains, masts, and poles full of treasure for your house and your lives. We have made you as couples, loving and close to one another. We have made the night a coverlet for your sleep of comfort, the daytime the arena in which you earn your livelihood, the sun a light-giving, heat-supplying lamp, and from the clouds we pour down water as though they were a spring producing the water of life. And we create easily and quickly from the simple water the various flower-bearing and fruit-bearing things which bear all your sustenance. Since this is so, the day of resurrection, the day when good and evil shall be separated out, awaits you. It is not difficult for us to bring about that day. In a veiled way, it points to proofs that after this, at the resurrection, the mountains will be scattered, the skies shattered, hell readied, and the people of paradise given gardens and orchards. It says, in effect, since he does these things related to the mountains and the earth before your very eyes, he shall do things resembling these in the hereafter. He shall do these things resembling these in the hereafter. That is to say, the mountain at the beginning of the surah looks to the state of the mountains at the resurrection, and the garden to the gardens in the hereafter. You may compare other points to this and see what a beautiful and elevated style it has. So this is the first page of the 30th juz of the Quran, Surah Amma. Inshallah, we will study part by part the place I read, inshallah. Colin Hocam, inshallah, can we start with you? Colin Hocam, can you hear me?
Sorry, I was muted. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think that for Said Nursi, the stylistic elegance of the Quran isn't there for its own sake, and I think this comes across in this passage, in the passages that you've chosen for today. Always, the aim of Quran is to communicate certain conceptual meanings, which are required if the main objective of the Quran, which is knowledge of Allah, knowledge of God, is to be obtained. So these certain conceptual meanings are expressed in terms which we can understand by just looking out at the creation. So mention of things here, for example, the sun and other cosmic phenomena is not made for its own sake, but for the sake of making known the Creator. So I think the important thing that I get from this right at the very beginning is that in Nursi's approach to the Quran, there is an implicit repudiation of that trend, which was current during the late Ottoman period of scientific, so-called scientific exegesis, tafsir ilmi. And that was gaining momentum during that time in certain scholarly quarters. Tantawi's tafsir, for example, I think appeared around the 1860s, 1870s. So when the Quran speaks of the sun, Nursi says, it's not because it wishes to tell its readers about the sun's nature, or it's not because it wishes to show some prescience about a particular cosmic event or a cosmic phenomenon. It speaks about the sun in order to highlight the duty of the sun and the fact, like all other mawjudat, all other created beings, it depends for its existence and its continued existence on the power of Allah and the mercy of Allah. So stylistics in Quran is connected with meaning, with phraseology, and with word order, and they are all there in order to enlighten us. So they're not there for their own sake. We have to understand a very other indicative way, in an other indicative way, when we're looking at cosmic phenomena in Quran. That's the first thing that jumps out at me.
The first, as you said, we see that indicative way, right? Everything talked about the clouds, mountains, even us as couples, the sun as a lamp, like it shows how they point to the Creator, how they are gifts from the Creator, and how they show the mercy of our Creator, right? Indicative shot in the first part. Mustafa Hocam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I first want to start with some disclosure. This is one of the aspects of the Risale-i Nur that I feel the least competent about, since it includes Ustad Nursi's really deep understanding of the Arabic language and the arts and eloquence of the Arabic language. And there are many allusions to, things in there that I'm not even aware of. I just read and move on. Therefore, you invited me and I said yes. And then I noticed later on that this was the topic. So I'll try to do my best, but don't expect much from me. Inshallah, I mean, as an idea, Junaid Shimshek might be a really good person to bring in for this, since his field specialty is balagha, his specialty is eloquence. But at any rate, what comes through to me as I read this is, when you hear a person speak, even before you analyze what they say, the meanings, the particulars of that speech, something strikes you as indicative of that person's status, position, approach to things. One concrete example that I can give about this is, those who know Turkish will understand this better, but I will try to explain for others too. There are almost two different Turkish languages right now. One is the language that was there at the beginning of the 20th century and to a large extent preserved in the Risale-i Nur, that incorporates a lot of Arabic and Persian words and stylistic formulations from those languages. And the other is the product of the artificial efforts of the Turkish state and educational system in the course of the 20th century to simplify the language and to eliminate Arabic and Persian origin words from Turkish. So in many cases, you can say the same thing in two different ways with two different set of words, and depending on how well versed your audience is in the older language, they will be able to understand you or not. So if I were speaking with a person in Turkey and I paid attention to their word choice, I would probably be able to tell their political inclinations, educational background, etc., from those like choices of words. But that also reflects a style because it becomes so naturally embedded into the language. Or let's assume that you are listening to a teacher speaking to his or her students and talking about the formation of mountains, and then you hear a student, let's say a 10-year child speaking to his friends talking about this, right? So you would expect something different in either of these cases. If you hear the president of a country talking about, let's say, a particular holiday in the country, and if you hear two bodies talking to one another about that holiday in the country, you would expect something different. So with style, I think we are getting to this sort of indication of the identity of the person who is speaking. When we look at this choice, the choice of Ustad Nursi's verses here from Surah An-Naba, Amma Yatasa'alun, right? It is all over the place, everywhere, everything is included and moves from place to place with such ease and takes you to the very essence of whatever is mentioned. So from mountains to the sky to the earth being a cradle, for instance, these metaphors are used with such ease, right? So when you look at that, you feel that this is coming from a source that has the world, and then there's the talk about the hereafter too, that has the present physical world and the hereafter all at once within its grasp, within its sight. It is seeing it all and describing it to you with the ease of having access to all of them all at once. And that is miraculous. I, as a human being, if I tried to write a passage describing all of these tremendous things moving from between this world and the hereafter and the human being and in between, right? I would probably have to spend pages and pages, perhaps books, to describe all these things in detail, and I would still not be able to get as much conveyed, as much through in so much text. So that is probably one of those miraculousness, as Ustad Nursi's focus in the 25th word is, that he is pointing out in this text. In addition to the caveat that Colin Hojam gave, that we always need to have to keep in mind that when Ustad talks about the Quran, and when Quran talks about matters like this, right, it is not for the sake of describing us what the mountains are, what the earth is, etc. It is, as Colin Hojam mentioned, it has other indicative purposes.
So, as you said here in this sentence too, it proves the divine acts and dominical works, Asar Rabbani, in this world, as though looking at each of those events of the next world, right, and convinces the heart.
Let me say this, sorry, quickly.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was listening to or watching and listening to a video about a Christian apologist who is giving a lecture to a class, but he pretends to be a disbeliever. They do this, oftentimes in order to hone the skills of their classroom in apologetics. He's pretending to be an atheist, and the students are asking him questions, and you can see that the students are all kind of intimidated because this guy is introduced to them as this big professor of something at some big university who has written books, etc., all sorts of things. Although they disagree with the man and they have this gut feeling that they probably want to strangle him, right? They ask the questions with this like timid voice, with a level of uncertainty that is heard in their voice. And they say, I think this is the case. I believe that is the case. I think, I believe, I assume, right? And the man who is in the position of this like big guy, right, big professor, right? He's speaking with certainty, according to such and such source on page, such and such page, or I read about this in this article by so and so, or turning the tables over against the children, against these kids, like, do you know that, or are you suggesting that? Do you know that, or did you just hear about it, etc.? So regardless of what they are saying, if you pay attention to the style that they are talking with, right, you can clearly see that one is in this position of authority and assured about his position, and the others are like trying hard, but they are not sure that they will be able to cross over the other side of the bridge, right? So this is, again, something that we see here. There's certainty, clarity, precision, the gathering of all the essential matters in such small space, right? All of those go into this style that shows the miraculousness of what we are looking at.
Jazakallah, Mr. Hocam. Definitely, this is the style. Inshallah, we have another verse to study too, but before we go there, Qur'an, any other comments on this? Also, like the
no, I don't have a comment on this, but if you remember when you started this particular subject, maybe now 4 weeks ago, like Mustafa Hojam, I issued a caveat at the beginning saying that I'm not an expert in rhetoric or balagha, and I had misgivings actually about looking at the 25th word because of its profundity, because of its subject matter, really. And I sort of issued a prior warning that my input would be very, very tentative and probably would skirt around the central issues of balagha quite a lot. So I was reminded of that caveat when Mustafa Hojam was talking about his disclosure.
Thank you. And here I just want to point out a few parts too. It's as you said, Allah Ta'ala talks about the divine acts, af'al ilahiyya and athar rabbaniyya, dominical words in this world, and convinces the heart of the things that will happen in the next world. It says, in effect, since he does these things related to the mountains and the earth before your very eyes, he shall do things resembling these in the hereafter. That is to say, the mountain at the beginning of the surah looks to the state of the mountains at the resurrection. As I can remember, like the mountains, Allah says, like it's the mountains as masts, Allah made as masts and poles full of treasure for your house and your lives. The one who makes the mountains like this, and then what will happen to the mountains in the hereafter. In the second part of the ayah, in the second part of the surah, the state of the mountains at the resurrection.
May I say something? The The word resurrection does not seem to convey what we have in mind here. This qiyamah, right? The rising, the doomsday. So it's the state of the mountains in the doomsday, as you know, God talks about it elsewhere in the Quran too, like how they will become like cotton, pieces of cotton spread all around, etc. Things like that, right? That's the imagery that needs to come to our mind when we refer to the state of the mountains during Qiyamah, the day of rising or the doomsday.
Jazakallah. Also, yes, thank you for clarification. Also, the gardens in this world, to the gardens of the hereafter, of the next world, the Akhirah. And also in Surah Al-Abasa too, right? And in the Surah right too, after that, talking about the gardens in this world and how miracles they are created. And they shown also, like Said Nursi talks in many other parts, the one who is able to make a flower as artful as this is able to make the huge spring and the gardens of the whole world. And the one who is able to make the gardens in this world full of art and full of, shows his infinite power, is of course able to do the gardens in the hereafter. So again, it proves the dominical works, the Asar Rabbani in this world, and convinces the hearts. And related to this, inshallah, there's another ayah that we will read today. I want to read it. It's about the sun. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And for example, as is proven at the end of the 19th word, the words tajri, runs its course and the sun runs its course to a place appointed. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا. And the sun runs its course to a place appointed. Opens a window onto an elevated style as follows. The words runs its course, tajri, that is, the sun revolves. It puts in mind the maker's tremendousness by recalling the orderly disposals of divine power. Muntazam tasarrufat kudreti ilahiya. By recalling the orderly disposals of divine power in the alternations of winter and summer and day and night. In the alternations of winter and summer and day and night. And directs one's gaze to the missives of the eternally besought one, inscribed by the pen of power on the pages of the seasons. It proclaims the wisdom of the all-glorious Creator. And with the word lamp in and set the sun as a lamp, it opens a window onto the style like this. It makes one understand the Maker's majesty and Creator's bounty by recalling that the world is a palace and the things within it are adornments, food and necessities prepared for man and living creatures, and that the sun is a subservient candle, demonstrating that the sun is an evidence of Allah's unity, and that the idolater's greatest, most brilliant object of worship is merely a subjugated lamp, an inanimate creature. That is to say, the word lamp calls to mind the Creator's mercy within the grandeur of his dominicality. It recalls his favors within the breadth of his mercy, and in so doing informs of his munificence within the majesty of his sovereignty, thereby proclaiming divine unity and saying indirectly, an inanimate and subservient lamp is in no way fit to be worshipped. So inshallah, there are other parts too, inshallah, we can talk about this. There are two parts, like in the place I read. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا. Again, like the style of the Quran is, Mustafa Hocam, as you said, when someone talks, like from the words, the choice of words and the style that person talks, you can even understand his, even political ideas, right? How he views the world, what he thinks about God, how he views the universe, and you can understand many other things from the style itself. And here we see, a clear style of the Quran, how he talks in a way that points everything to the Creator, Maker, and His mercy. Any comments on this, Mustafa Hocam?
I was hoping you would ask Quranic Hocam first.
Yeah. I was gonna ask Quranic Hocam, but I remembered what I said in the previous.
Okay.
Quranic Hocam, yeah. Or Mustafa Hocam, yeah.
Yeah, let me try. Okay, I'm trying to imagine myself as a Bedouin hearing this in the 6th, 7th centuries in the desert. I have no understanding of geography. I have no understanding of astronomy. The sun is this thing, really hot thing that comes every day, seems to be elevated in the sky and then goes down. So what else do I know about the sun? I probably know nothing, right? So that this that God here is talking about the sun as this thing first that runs a course, right? And also runs a course to a point of stability, appointed place, mustaqarrin, right? I think that might be a better translation, but anyway. So you certainly see that somebody, one second, my son is yelling behind. Sorry about that. My son was yelling right next to my head and I couldn't put together. If you like, you see that whoever said this is saying it knowing what he is, with certainty about what he is saying. And also seeing the beginning and the end of the matter all at once together. He has knowledge of where the sun is now, what the sun is doing, where it is going, right? And it is also going to find a place of stability eventually. So once again, this gives us almost a feeling of, put aside the rational argumentations, the inferences, etc., that could be made about this. It gives us a feeling that whoever says this has a significantly better understanding of the sun than I do as this imaginary Bedouin in the middle of the desert. And later, if science confirms this in one way or another, all the better. But as Quranic Hocam said at the beginning, that's not the point. The point is the impression that this makes on me as the average person hearing it in the 6th century, the 10th century, 15th century, 20th century, and 21st century. The impression, the impressiveness of it, right, comes from the position of the person that you feel that person is speaking from, right? You can almost sense the level of authority that this is coming from.
It's the elevated style. Sure. In the first parts we read, I see that when Mustafa Hocam, when you said the sun runs its course to a place appointed, if we imagine ourselves like in that time. Also, again, like since we are talking about the style, it says here, Said Nursi says, Muntazam tasarrufat kudreti ilahiya, the orderly disposals of divine power. And it's what makes us remember, right? That the orderly disposals of divine power. When we says as you said, it's talking about the sun, right? It's as if the sun, it's holding the sun in its hands, like in his hand of power, and says that this sun shows the orderly disposals of divine power. And it's Mektubat Samedaniye, the missives of eternally besought one. Colin Hocam, any comments?
Not really about the subject matter as such, but what I understand from this, or what actually becomes now more clear for me, is the symbolic and correspondential nature of the Quran and the tropes that it uses, the themes, the images that it uses, the way that it has recourse to cosmic phenomena. Language is the greatest symbolic structure that has ever been created and given to us. And we shouldn't forget that when we are looking at Quran and we're talking about cosmic phenomena. And as we've said before, the whole point of this is not to give us the scientific detail, to tell us how these things function. These things are correspondences or symbols, and they are talking about spiritual truths. They are pointing and indicating truths and realities of the spiritual world. We know that everything that is in Alam al-Mulk, in the visible, tangible world, corresponds to things which are not exactly the same, but are they are indicated. For example, the sun. Said Nursi uses the sun so many times as a symbol of unity. When he talks about, there is only one sun, but we see its reflections, billions of reflections in drops of water or in shards of glass or in bubbles. He's using the sun correspondentially. The sun there is not the sun that we see in the sky. The sun there is the sun of unity. And so I think we need to nurture in ourselves an ability, as with all, the great scholars who were able to make tafsir and particularly ta'wil, of seeing these things correspondentially and symbolically. So the sun is, Nursi says the sun is a lamp. What is a lamp? A lamp is something that gives heat and light. What does light do? Light enlightens. So the sun there is a symbol of spiritual enlightenment. What does spiritual heat mean? I'm not sure, but heat and light come together, and they are everywhere. They are diffused everywhere. So Nursi is very conscious, very aware of the symbolic significance of Quranic themes and Quranic images. If we go back a little bit, if you can scroll down and we go back, when he's talking about the mountain before, he puts the word mountain, in inverted commas. I think you need to go further back. There we are. Yes. The word mountain, no, it's not there. It's either before there or after there. Yeah, there it is. Right. That is to say the mountain. Mountain as well. It's another cosmic phenomenon, but we can understand it symbolically and correspondentially. If you think of and I'm saying this because I've read extensively on symbolism, on religious symbolism, and mountain apparently is a symbol of ego. It is so in biblical symbology, and it would appear to be also in Quranic symbology, although Quranic symbology is not even a discipline yet. And I think it is really something that people should be working on, people with expertise that I don't have, should be working on Quranic symbology. Because if you recall the story of Nuh alayhi salam, when Noah was building the ark and his son refused to get in the ark, his son expressed a preference to take himself to the mountain where he thought he would be able to save himself. And there are scholars and symbologists who have said that the mountain here is the ego. Noah's son was a disbeliever and he didn't trust his father's endeavor of building the ark. And he said, I'm going to save myself by going to the mountain. In other words, I'm going to save myself by relying on my own ego. So mountain can be understood as something which is apparently very, very enduring and very, very coarse and very, very hard. But at the end of the day, that can be overpowered. As we see, the waters rose above the mountain and completely covered it, and he was drowned. So, what I'm trying to do is just put out there an idea that we should really be looking at the other indicative understanding of Quranic tropes and Quranic images, and the symbology and correspondentiality of these things. And I think it is completely in line with how Said Nursi understands the images in the Quran and the cosmic phenomena in the Quran, and he makes use of them in order to communicate these very profound realities about the divine, about our Creator.
And also, the Quran is like that, right? It's like symbolic. When the Quran also talks about the mountain, Evitada, like the poles, like mountains as poles, and the sun as a lamp. Yani, so when we look at the sun, we don't see the sun anymore. We see a lamp of Allah that's giving light and heat to us.
Absolutely. And then he says that, where are we? He says that when you look at the sun, you can see generosity then. You can see munificence. So the sun is telling us so many things about the Creator. One of is divine unity, obviously. And this is something that is very prevalent in Said Nursi's writings, the use of the sun to express divine unity. But here we also see divine generosity, divine munificence. So to get into this sort of habit of trying to understand the Quran correspondentially actually makes the Quran come alive for us, because we are always adjacent to these phenomena. We're in front of them, we're behind them, we see them all the time. They surround us. And they're put there for a reason. They're put there to remind us of very, very important realities and facts about our Creator, who is the one that these signs are pointing towards.
Also related, in the chat, I see that Brother Mehmet says, while everything is getting older and older, the Quran is getting younger. And Nibab says, as the time grows old, the Quran grows young. And Bediuzzaman, you said the style of the Quran, 1400 years ago, it said the sun as a lamp, and it shows the generosity and power and knowledge of Allah. The sun, how he controls the sun. And as the time grows old, the technology, we are developed like intellectually, like maybe knowledge. And as we also, the time grows old and we grow old. But I guess because of the style of the Quran, right? And 1400 years ago, you would look at the sun and you would see it as a lamp, and you would understand the generosity and power of your Creator. But now, 1400 years past, the time, like I said, grows old, but you see the generosity and power of your Creator even more, right? I mean, when you learn more about the sun, actually you appreciate the generosity and power of your Creator more.
Yeah, this is why I was very conscious of the need to repudiate this whole current of scientific tafsir, because that turns the Quran into a book of science instead of being a book of signs, and it is reductive. It really sort of diminishes the stature of the Quran and reduces it to a scientific textbook. So these things there are They are symbolic aids to us, you know, the sun, the stars. This is proven in the dream of Yusuf alayhi salam, you know, where the sun and the stars are clearly have a symbolic function, a correspondential function. You know, that's telling us something. That whole surah is telling us something. And this actually does bring the Quran alive, because we are immersed in a cosmos, in a universe where these phenomena are part of our everyday lives. So we have no reason not to be aware, you know, and not to be cognizant of these signs and symbols, you know, floating around us, revolving around us. We don't have to be a mufassir, you know. We just have to have eyes to see and a bit of creative imagination. And, you know, you can understand a lot.
Jazakallah. This is also, it's very interesting. In this part, I see, you know, we talked about the sun being a lamp, just a lamp of our Creator. But interestingly, in the past, the idolaters' greatest, most brilliant object of worship, I mean, it was the sun, right? They were worshiping the sun. And it says, an inanimate and subservient lamp is in no way fit to be worshipped.
That's correct. And then at the bottom of the page, it says, for the Quran does not speak of the sun for the sake of the sun, but for the one who illuminates it. So the sun is there to actually explain the Creator.
Inshallah, I can read that part too. Was there many more comments on this part? If not, inshallah, I will read that part. That is to say, or here, and in the course of runs its course, Tajri, in the word runs, the sun runs its course, it calls to mind the wondrous, orderly disposals of divine power in the revelations of night and day and winter and summer. And in so doing makes known the grandeur of a single maker's power in his dominicality. That is to say, it turns man's mind from the points of the sun and moon to the pages of night and day and winter and summer, and draws his attention to the lines of events written on those pages. For the Quran does not speak of the sun for the sake of the sun, but for the one who illuminates it. Also, it does not speak of the sun's nature, for which man has no need, but of the sun's duty, which is that of mainspring for the order of dominical art and center of the order of dominical creativity, and the shuttle for the harmony and the order of dominical art in the things the pre-eternal inscriber weaves with the threads of day and night. You can compare others of the Quran's words with these. While all are simple, ordinary words, each performs the duty of a key to treasures of subtle meanings. A key to treasuries of subtle meanings. MashaAllah, the ordinary, while all are simple, ordinary words, each performs the duty of a key to treasuries of subtle meanings.
Let me say something there, Omar.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go back to my example of the Bedouin, but also most human beings in this world who might have taken the time to think about some of these phenomena that we see in the cosmos, like mountains, the sun, the moon, the alternation of days and nights and seasons, etc., etc. If we, this is just a guess, but I think it can be substantiated if you were to look at literature in general, novels, poems, songs, etc., and try to see how human beings tend to talk about these phenomena. Once again, the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, oceans, the alternation of day and night. I suppose we would see impressions of beauty, right, and admiration before that beauty, and also a very strong sense of awe. Seeing the sun in the sky, seeing the alternation of day and night, especially the waves of oceans, or the sense of awe that fills a human being's chest when you look at a really high mountain that you may see the zenith of the mountain between clouds covered with snow, etc. And even if we did not go to literature, everybody can probably attest to this in their own experience. So typically, this is what we would expect from a human being. This is what we would expect to find in a human being's speech, right? But when we look at the Quran and these verses, it is talking about the sun, the moon, and elsewhere too, the oceans, the mountains, etc., as tiny, small objects which have particular functions in a larger system, be it the palace of the cosmos with the firmament as a ceiling for the human beings, and the earth laid out as a cradle for the human being before and prepared before it comes, the human being comes to the world in the person of Adam alayhi salam, and after him his progeny, Adam and Eve, right? You see that it is not speaking about them from the position of that sense of awe before majesty and beauty and perfection, but rather it is speaking with an instruction about that orderliness. And it was somewhere in the Tasarrufat al-Rabbani, Intizam Tasarruf al-Rabbani, the order in the disposals of the Lord, right? Something like that in the text that you showed. It talks about their orderliness. It talks about their submission and subjugation. So there is a difference from what we typically would expect from the human position and what we see in the Quran. However, if we take one more step further, that we see the speaker in the Quran talk about such awe-inspiring things for the human being with such ease and simplicity and understanding, and from a position of authority, then we are filled with the awe of the speaker, because we sense that he is much higher than the sun, much higher than the moon. The sun is just a slave of his, the moon is just a slave of his, the alternation of the days and nights is just his disposal in this world. And then he moves on to speak about even more tremendous things that are to come, right? And we are filled with a sense that the one who can subjugate this colossal thing, the sun, or those colossal mountains, in the way that he does, he sure can do these other things that he is saying he will.
Topics, as you said, with such ease and simplicity that everyone, even the one who has no knowledge, even the one who lived 1400 years ago, can relate to, right? Can understand and can benefit. MashaAllah, this is another part of the miraculousness of the Quran. It talks about, and the style of the Quran, that it's so simple and expresses in ease. In the chat, there's a comment. I told hocam. The manifest realm is like a book. The manifest realm is like a book with its topics materialized, which includes many nuances due to the word ordering and choice, the flow of topics, etc. Balagha, this eloquence, is speech delivery in accordance with the audience's state, comprehension, habits, etc. And as we said, the eloquence of the Quran, since most people, their level, like not everyone is a scientist, and most people have very little knowledge. And the Quran, the Balagha, the eloquence necessitates that it should be simple. In the particular case of the sun running its course, how topics are chosen in Quran and the way they are presented makes this book timeless. How topics are chosen in the Quran and the way they are presented make this book timeless. Because in today's astronomy, the trajectory of the stars, the reciprocating ego motion, oscillations are the hot topics. And this verse is addressing, the end of this verse is addressing this particular audience and inviting them to Iman, to belief. And there's only one nuance. And the last sentence, the sun metaphor looks many sicknesses of the heart and the soul, which would take many seasons to go through, many sessions to go through. Tolga hocam, can you explain the last sentence here? The sun metaphor looks to many sicknesses of the heart.
Assalamu alaikum. I think Colin hocam has briefly mentioned about this. He referred to some parts that are in the Bible, but from my own readings and other research, I know that sun is also referring to, I guess, some group of people who are unfortunately believing in sun. This is funny at this time of the world, but there are still people who think sun is the source of everything, and it also looks to the egotistical person, because especially the science-oriented people takes objects in the universe which are huge to be the source of, for example, life or many forces. But Allah is saying that no, I mean, although the sun is a big thing and your ego is having a lot of pleasure in believing that it is the source of things. No, he says, Allah says, I am the source of whatever you're believing in. So in that respect, it looks to ego, and this causes sickness in the heart as well.
Yeah, mashallah, we said in the past people worshipped the sun, and now even in this time we can say, as you said, the naturalist people, the sun is seen as a source of life. It's as if, it's what gives us life, but it's not the case, right? Allah says in the Quran, we see the sun is not the source of life. It's just a lamp. When we look at the sun, it's just a lamp, not the source of life or anything.
I don't want to take over the discussion, but to me, these type of verses have two aspects. One of them is the constructive way, or one is that the Quran is trying to construct the meanings or establish meanings in the minds of the reader. And the other aspect of such verses is that it tries to shatter or sever some bonds, some connections that are mistakenly established in the minds of the disbeliever or people who have some doubts. So this verse is doing the both. For the believer, it is saying that look at the sun and see how an orderly course it is following. And for the disbeliever, it is saying that, oh, look at this sun is just a lamp in the whole universe, which is under my control. So maybe this is one of the aspects of eloquence that we can, understand from these verses.
Thank you. Alhamdulillah, today we talked about the style of the Quran and how he delivers his message. Alhamdulillah. We studied the Surah Amma Yatasa'ilun, and the ayah وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا. The sun runs its course. Mustafa Hocam, Colin Hocam, any more comments?
I'd just like to go back to what Mustafa Hocam was saying about awe. What detracts from the awe and the grandeur of these verses is partly our reducing the Quran to a history book or a science book, and that takes place through various means. One of them is this obsession with so-called scientific tafsir. One is overemphasis on asbabul nuzul. It tends to demystify the Quran in a sense and detract and take away from that awe and splendor and sense of wonder, that we are supposed to feel when we contemplate these cosmic phenomena, and also when we understand how the cosmic phenomena are woven into the fabric of the Quran. That was all, really.
Colin Hocam, before you finish, inshallah, can you also make a dua for this session, inshallah?
Yeah, I pray that we all have the fortitude and the understanding and the wherewithal to read the Quran as though it is being revealed to us moment by moment, second by second, and as though it is being revealed to us and us only, inshallah.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for joining.
Wa alaikum salam. See you next week, inshallah.